Season 1, Episode 2, The Pilot Who Found His Co-Pilots. In this second story, we meet David, an airline pilot who spent his life soaring through the clouds, only to find himself grounded by an unexpected storm. The call came not from a control tower, but from a doctor's office. For 30 years, David had been a master of the skies. His office was a cockpit. His desk, a control panel of buttons and switches. He spoke a language of flight plans and altitude, of velocity and air currents. He was a man of precision, of perfect landings, a commander of the air. His life was a testament of control and confidence. Every morning, he put on his uniform, a second skin of polished brass and starched white, and knew his destination. He never saw the turbulence coming. The diagnosis, prostate cancer, was the worst kind of turbulence. It wasn't a mechanical failure he could fix with a checklist. It was a silent, invisible force shaking at the very foundation of his life. The doctor's voice was calm, but the words felt like a warming bell, an alarm he had no idea how to silence. David's world, once a clear blue sky, was now cloaked in a thick, dark fog. He came home that day and felt like a stranger in his own uniform. He looked at the framed photo of himself standing beside a gleaming 747 and saw a different man, not a pilot, but a passenger. He hung up his jacket and retreated into the hangar of his own mind, a place filled with the ghost of questions. How could this be? What was I doing wrong? He knew how to talk a plane through a storm, but he didn't know how to talk about the one that was raging inside of him. His wife, Maria, tried. She asked, "How was your day?" And he'd give a one-word answer. She tried to hug him, and he'd pull away, not because he didn't want her comfort, because he was afraid of his own fear. His fear would be contagious. He was an officer, a protector. He couldn't lead the crew, see the pilot was panicking, so he kept to himself, convinced that silence was strength. It was a fellow pilot, an old friend named Ben, who finally broke through. Ben had noticed David was quiet on the radio, his usual easy chatter gone. He called one evening and simply said, "Dave, I heard I was there myself a few years back. It's not a solo flight, man. You need a crew." Ben invited him to a gathering. He used a different kind of language, not of flight, but of fire. "It's a campfire," he said, "a place to tell stories." Reluctantly, David went. He sat in a circle with men from all walks of life, a mechanic, a teacher, a landscaper. They were a motley crew, but around that fire, they were all co-pilots in the same storm. They spoke not of their illness, but of their lives, the fear, the anger, the moments of profound gratitude. They shared their campfire cancer survivor stories. A man named Frank, a gruff retired mechanic, told his story of feeling like a rusted out engine. But then he talked about his wife's support, and a shared conversation with his son had been the grease that got the gears turning again. He said that his ProState Attitude wasn't about flying a perfect flight, but it was about the courage to declare an emergency and ask for help. As David listened to these men, a profound truth began to emerge. His life wasn't just a flight path, it was a journey, and a journey he realized is best taken with others. He understood that vulnerability wasn't a sign of weakness, but the first step in a new flight plan. That night he went home, and for the first time in months, he truly saw Maria. He took her hands in his, and he talked. He spoke of the fear of being grounded, feeling like his identity had been stripped away, and he spoke that he felt a weight lift, a pressure equalized, and he wasn't a pilot fighting a storm alone anymore. He had a co-pilot. The road ahead was still full of unknowns, but David knew he had found his new altitude. He had his wife, his family, and a new community of men who understood. He had a new perspective. He may not be in the cockpit every day, but he was still a commander of his own life, and he was ready to fly again.